Hi everybody, this is Elizabeth with Live Simple, Live Free. Here we go. Yeah.
Wow.
It isn't very often that I just sort of sit in front of the camera to talk about something that's on my mind, unless it's like Tea with Jesus, which, I prepare for that. And there's times when Bill and I have certainly sat and talked with you about things, but this is something that's kind of just been on my heart. And I want to see if I can explain what I've been thinking in as clear a way as I possibly can. I really do love all you guys, and I'm just so glad that we can have you be a part of our life. And I've been thinking about this for a little while, and so I'll try to express it the best I can here. We have so many things going on in the world right now, and as we all very well know. And I've been thinking about how we look at things kind of as a whole society. And something that I've been thinking about that I think has had a kind of an overall pretty maybe big effect on us is what I kind of call the Star Trek mentality. And I don't know if everybody there has ever watched something like Star Trek. I am a bit of a nerd, geek, definitely. I enjoyed, from the very beginning, whenever I could watch any of the Star Trek, I've always got a big kick out of it. I enjoy Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. It's been fun. It's been fun to me to watch it. I'm a big Tolkien, aficionado. I love the stuff that he wrote, and so just a little bit of a nerd, I guess you could say. And I think about the world that you see when you watch something like Star Trek shows. And Gene Roddenberry, when he started Star Trek, really wanted to somehow come up with a way to show how that we could make a utopia out of our world. And he was one of the first ones to have all different races on his show, which was really cool because that had not been that common before then. And he tried to give it kind of a fun science fiction look at the future, but one that was really based on man being able to somehow solve our problems and create what was basically a real utopia, not only on Earth, but as within Star Trek, they find all of these other people on different planets. There's even a federation of planets that can live in peace and make good decisions and be a good group together. So if there's ever bad guys on Star Trek, it's not from people still having any kind of battles here on Earth. It's always some kind of an alien race that are bad alien races, bad guys. And it's kind of fun to imagine a world where we've taken care of pollution. People never go hungry. You can artificially create food and what they call replicators. There's no fuel issues because they figured out ways for people to be able to travel not only in vehicles or spaceships that can use great technology that we don't have now, but even being able to transport somebody. That all of these things have been solved. There isn't war anymore. They don't have to have money because everybody just has everything that they need, and humanity is just a lovely kind of peaceful group, and even within Star Trek, they have this character called Q, who's supposed to have omnipotent powers. He's very powerful, kind of alien, and they're really always trying to prove to Q that mankind is worth preserving because of how far we've come, and what we've been able to accomplish as humankind. And it's a kind of a fun picture, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, whenever people seem to make movies or shows that have to do with the future, they always seem to go one of two directions. They're either very utopian, like the Star Trek world is, where we figured things out and science has solved our problems, and we have a benevolent, like worldwide or even, planets together kind of oversight government that's very benevolent. That they create this really wonderful potential world where you can do so many neat things. Or it's what they call dystopian, which means that everything is a complete, like total ruin, disaster. And people are struggling with that. And I've been thinking about what that really tells us as a society. And we can't underestimate the impact that years and years and years of programs, of movies, of video games, of all this stuff that is now so much in all of our technology that we have, how that has permeated our culture for so long now. And I think that even without stopping to think about it, I think that we sort of have a feeling like that given the opportunity, someday science is going to solve all of our problems. And that someday we really are going to be totally green. We're not going to have to rely on any fossil fuels or anything like that. There's going to be some scientific technology that's going to solve these problems of transportation and heating and energy that we need. And isn't it going to be wonderful? And I think what we have to really realize, we have to step back and honestly look and realize that even though we do have some pretty amazing technology nowadays, we do, my goodness, that we have to know, though, that the things that have been presented in all of these futuristic things, those are still, they are fiction. It's called science fiction for a reason. It's not fact. It's what somebody is making up. And I think they can come up with some amazing ideas sometimes. And I know that people have done some pretty amazing, literal, real scientific developments. But this Star Trek world is still fiction. And I think that's important because if we are basing our look at the future on either expecting man and his science and his government to fix our world, then maybe we're not going to really see things for the way they really are. I think we make a lot of our confusion comes from many times where people believe that man is just sort of evolving into a better and greater being, depending on all sorts of different ways that people approach that, but that we are evolving even spiritually into something greater. In the Star Trek universe, they don't need God anymore. They've been able to evolve out of that. They'll just kind of be nice that some people still need to believe in a God because they haven't evolved past that point. That's very dominant throughout the whole Star Trek thing. That if we just keep evolving, we will become more and more wonderful all the time. But, the reality is that mankind disobeys God and disobeys right and wrong all the time. And we, from the very Garden of Eden, where God had created an incredible utopia for them, and Adam and Eve just decided to disobey, and they just came into sin. We just live in a pretty broken world because of sin. That's why Jesus came, to give us hope. And so rather than mankind not needing God and just getting smarter and fixing things all the time, we have tended to really, without God in our life, generally we have tended to be people that go to war, people that try to conquer each other, people that damage things. Let's just get real about it. We aren't good on our own. We are very prone towards sin and toward doing things that are not good. It's God's power in our life that can change us. So, man's not this wonderful creation. No, not even creation. Man's not this wonderful evolutionary creature who's going to just become more and more great all the time. That's just not the reality of what we see. And, what if we're thinking about all these horrible dystopian things that we see in movies and in shows? Those usually happen because there has been some major terrible epidemic that's wiped out, mankind, or we have finally destroyed the environment, or there's been some kind of big major war that has just wiped things out, and there's been a struggle then to try to make life again. And many times the whole world's been blown up, but there's a small area where people have been able to create a controlled environment that is safe, and where everything is like nice inside of there, but the people aren't free. They may be safe, but they're not free at all. They have to maintain exactly the structure that has been given to them. And so for us to live basing our decisions on being terrified that we're going to ruin the environment and end up freezing everything, or because global warming is causing severe freezing. I've watched movies that have all sorts of different kinds of aspects like that, where we have destroyed the environment, and so now, mankind is being destroyed. If we are, for one thing, thinking about that kind of a thing, then are we going to be making really good decisions about what really is going on in the world? And what do we really need to be taking care of or worrying about or whatever? Are we dealing with genuine science and genuine situations in this world that the Lord has created? Or are we basing how we look at things on a fear of something that we've seen in some futuristic show or movie? Are we going to allow ourselves to walk very happily into a totalitarian kind of control because we feel like if they don't take care of us, everything's going to fall apart? What are we really basing our decisions on? And then if I go back to the whole everything's wonderful utopian idea, then are we going to be ready to say that whatever science has come up with, now we're coming into a wonderful world. We are going to be able to artificially create the food that we need. Because, replicators do it, in Star Trek. Are we going to be able to artificially create this? Are we going to be able to solve all of our social problems as long as we can have a one world benevolent government watching over us? If we decide that we're going to just unilaterally decide that we're going to go where we don't, have any reliance on any of these terrible, dirty things like fossil fuels, because somebody's going to create something that's going to solve all that problem. But are we looking at the reality of what would happen if we didn't work very carefully with what we actually have to work with? There's technology now where we could have our own private flying vehicles, and they probably wouldn't bump into each other, and the computer could take us wherever we want to go. They are truly creating driverless cars. But let's be realistic. I was talking to a very brilliant young man. He is just amazingly smart young man. And he said, well, yeah, we've got all the technology we need so that we could have the computers interacting and it'd be no problem. But we still don't know how to create something that would lift off like a drone does, that would be large enough that isn't going to blow everything to smithereens under it. It creates terrible, terrible downdraft. And, being able to figure out how to really make that land safely and take off safely, that problem has not really been figured out. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we really want to be able to step back and make sure that we are looking at real facts, and we're not being so influenced by stuff that's just become a kind of our collective consciousness through so many things that have been presented to us over and over again on different kinds of media for so many years. And also, quite honestly, I'm very open about the fact that I love Jesus with all my heart. I'm very definitely a follower of him. I believe the Bible is amazing, and the truth that God tells us in there is incredible. God knows the truth, and he knows genuinely the real standard of what is right and what is wrong. And he is the source of us having any kind of understanding of that. And so I know that we also have to be realistic that when people get into greater and greater power, that is not always going to end up with a good result, because power starts to affect people, especially when there becomes power that's over huge numbers of people. They're not necessarily going to always be benevolent. God's the only one that's not corrupted by power, and that's because he is holy and he is good and loving and he knows what's going on. And so I'm not saying we should, I'm praying for our government. I pray for the people that are in our government positions. And I'm not trying to say anything against them, that's not the point. But we've got to be careful to not think that if we get enough people controlling the whole world, that they're going to come up with solutions that are going to be good for everybody. Because that doesn't tend to be how people end up handling power. And when it comes right down to it, the day is going to come where there is going to be an incredible world here. Because Jesus is going to come back. And he will rule and reign on earth for at least the 1,000-year millennium. And then we'll go on from there into a new heavens and a new earth. And there will be a time under his really righteous government where things are going to be a lot better. Of course they will be. But I don't want us to naively think that somehow in these next years that are coming, that man's going to figure out how to fix it all. Man has not been real good at that. And no matter how much our science fiction tries to tell us anything different, people are going to not really do things that are going to be beneficial to everybody else when they start getting into positions of really overwhelming power. There are good people that are in government. Of course there are. But I just don't want us to blindly say that if we can all be coming under a worldwide government that's going to use science and everything to fix everything, I think that we are being very, very, we're relying on something that's just fiction and maybe not the real facts. And I think for each of us in our lives, we need to know why we stand for what we stand for. What is our standard of right and wrong going to be? What is going to be our motivation for caring for others and doing things for them and caring about what happens to people? Are we going to be people that are going to truly stand for what God has shown us to be right and wrong? And to know that apart from Jesus' salvation, it's very hard for people to ultimately be very benevolent towards others. It's just the reality of it. Let's live our lives just trusting God, walking with him, knowing that he's the one that's ultimately really knows the truth, really knows the future, and being as loving toward each other as we can, and in all of our actions, in everything that we do, standing for what we know to be right. And then knowing that no matter what happens in this world, ultimately we're going to have to trust the Lord and his care for us, and that he will eternally care for us because we belong to him through Jesus. We belong to him. But I just see our world so often feeling like, wow, if we just get green enough, if we just get enough scientific inventions, if we just make sure that everybody has the same, of course I want everybody to have the blessings that they need in their life, of course I do, but the whole attitude that if someone has something, if they've built a business or something, then everything they have should be taken from them and given to those who haven't. It doesn't work that way. But it ultimately, you need to have people who can do something well and do it strongly to be able to benefit others. And we just can't feel like that we're going to be able to walk into a situation where we don't need money, And the government's going to take care of us. And the government's going to fix everything in our environment. And the government's going to make sure we have everything that we need. Because isn't that the reality of what we've seen in the world of Star Trek for so many years? Isn't it going to happen? Let's make sure that we know we're talking about facts and not somebody's well-written science fiction. The truth actually can be wonderful, but I just don't want us to be naive. I hope I've made sense with this. I've tried really hard to explain kind of what's been in my heart about it. If you haven't been very much of a geek about the science fiction, maybe it's never affected you that much. But I'll guarantee you that through the generations, it has had a profound effect in people's lives. So listen, I love you guys. Thanks for kind of just listening to me thinking here. And I appreciate you. And I know that ultimately whatever is going to happen in this world, we have to trust the one who created us. And that is going to be where our hope is really going to lie. Yeah. All right, love you guys, and I'll see you later. Okay, bye-bye.